All right. This is Mike Barnes, the financial first responder. I'm back. Hey, today we're going to be talking about the 7 reasons to use an emergency fund, or better yet, life happens fund. So, if you haven't already done this, I need you to like and subscribe my channel. I need you to share this with a friend, a worker, coworker, colleague, whatever you want to call it. And I want you to understand that what we're talking about is greater than what you might think. You need to learn how to ring that bell. So, without further ado, let's get started. So, when we talk about emergency funds, I want you to start thinking about all of the things that that emergency fund needs to cover. Over the years, I've experienced this firsthand, and most of you probably have, but you really haven't thought about it. That emergency fund is income replacement in the event you lose your income. It's going to cover your housing, it's going to cover paying your utilities and for food. And what it's going to do is it's going to allow you to maintain some stability. We know right now that the economy is really going a different way than most people like. And what I want you to start thinking about and processing in your brain is that if you transition from a job or you lose your job or you start a new career, you need to have an emergency fund at least 3 to 6 months times your salary or your expenses, actually your expenses that are set aside in something that I like to call the life happens fund. So the first thing I want you to do is I want you to start setting some money aside for those emergencies. Now, when we're making decisions, the emergency fund allows you to make timely decisions or wise decisions, and it allows you to avoid panicking because we all know that when there's a lack of money, we make rash decisions. It allows you to choose the right time to move, and it allows you to plan properly for those transitions. Now, nobody ever wants to be fired. Nobody ever wants to have to be forced to make a financial decision under distress, but it happens often in the United States. I don't care who you are, what race you are, where you come from, your background, everybody needs an emergency fund. One of the things we want to avoid is, and I'm guilty of this and have been, is that we overuse our credit cards because we don't have an emergency fund. Now, some of you have had the opportunity to use payday loans, and that is a big no. You don't want anything tied to your paycheck as far as having to pay 15 days later, 30 days later, or whenever you get paid. And then the last one, even though you can do it, it erodes your retirement. So borrowing from your retirement should be one of those last options you do. But at the same time, at least you have the retirement that you could get up to 50,000 in most cases that you could actually do, but you got to have the money there. And so that leads to another problem. If you're not a saver, an investor, and you haven't put money into your retirement, then you can scratch that off the block and basically say, hey, I don't have any assets. Now, when we think about benefits and your pay gaps, what we're talking about is for some of you, you've applied for your VA benefits, but they've been delayed because they have to make a decision or they've changed the way that they rate people. You have insurance gaps because when you leave a job, you're without insurance unless you have Cobra, right? And then if you start a job, you may have paycheck delays. That those delays may be, hey, maybe you have to wait 2 weeks in the hole or a month in the hole before you get paid. And that could wreak havoc on a family when you're starting a new position or a new job. We're also looking at how do we protect our retirement. See, your 401k, the max that you can withdraw from there is about 50,000. Your TSP is about 50,000, provided you have the money there to borrow. IRAs, You really can't borrow anything from the IRA. You can be taxed on it if you take the money out prior to 59 and a half. But I need you to understand that these are your last resorts. These are the portions that you've contributed to. These are your contributory plans that you put in place. Most people don't have a pension plan. They have a contribution plan, which means they contribute a portion of it, and your employer contributed a percentage of it. But the majority of the money is your money. Now, the financial first responder wants you to think about this for a second. Having an emergency fund allows you to have some mental stability. Mental stability. If you have money set aside, it's low stress. Now, some of you take high blood pressure medicine, and as soon as you have a financial issue, your blood pressure goes through the roof. It allows your family to be calm because they're no longer living paycheck to paycheck. There's a reserve set up. And you can focus and make clear decisions because you have the emergency fund. Now, before I go to the next thing, I want you to think about this for a second. I want you to think about the fact that when you have mental stability, you tend to make better decisions. Now, let's talk about opportunity creation. Some of you are going to do additional training. You're going to get certifications. You're going to start a new job. You're going to start a business that fulfills a need. Or some of you are going to have to make a career pivot. And if you've never made a career pivot, what I mean is transitioning from the military or transitioning from one industry to another. That's a pivot. And some of you have never done that. But then most of you have changed jobs periodically over the last 10, 15, 20 years where you had to make a pivot. Maybe it was for more money. Maybe it was because you got educated in a different field. Maybe it was because you no longer like working where you worked at. Or maybe it was your time was up and it was time for you to move on. But when an opportunity arises, having an emergency fund in place reduces the stress during the pivot. Nothing worse than having a financial pivot and a business or a educational pivot that will stop you from doing or pursuing the things that you now love or want to pursue. So having an emergency fund is a great way to lead into being able to accept new opportunities. Now, we talk about the financial positioning system integration. And what it does is the financial positioning system is our proprietary software. It allows you to look at your cash flow through the lens of what you need to do. Now, a lot like wearing glasses, it allows you to focus, right? So what are we focusing on? We're focusing on your cash flow. And in the words of one of my mentors, cash flow is king. Some of you only have your job for cash flow, and then some of you have rental properties or commercial properties, or you have a business, you have a software, you have something that provides an income stream. And the only thing that you need to look at this point is while you're creating your income streams, you need to have the emergency fund in place to help you control said income streams, because income streams, they can be very abundant or they can be very sparse. See, the emergency fund helps you target what needs to be done, because when your basic needs are met, then you can do other ventures. It also helps if you are able to continue your risk mitigation or your risk protection. Now, what do I mean by that? You want to make sure you have car insurance, because if something happens where you have an accident, you don't want your assets to be at risk because you didn't have insurance. Having the emergency fund allows you to continue to pay those bills. Nothing worse than having an accident that kills you or makes you disabled if your family would struggle because you lack having an emergency fund. Just remember, life happens, people. It's happening to us, It's happening in front of us, it's happening behind us, and it's going to happen to us in the future. So having an emergency fund leads you down the road of being prepared. And then it allows you to have a transition strategy. You see, being able to transition, whether it's to a new job, a new opportunity, a new business, or helping someone else transition. As an example, if you're in the sandwich generation, you got older relatives or your mother or father that you're responsible for, and you have your children that are in college or starting out on their own. And sometimes those people transition and they may not have everything together and they're depending on your help. So having an emergency fund allows you to help them without worrying about your situation. What we know is that you have to be able to take action. You have to look at this conceptually and look at the content or contextually, that you have to have asset readiness. You have to assess your assets and make sure that if something were to happen, because it will, life happens, that you're able to take care of your family financially. You want to identify any income risk and fix it. Because a lot of you don't realize that if you leave your job or if you transition, your insurance is not portable, meaning you can't take it with you in most cases. It stays with your job. So that would mean that you wouldn't have life insurance. That would mean that you wouldn't have disability insurance. That would mean that you would have to expend more money on your medical insurance while you're waiting for to be covered. You have co-payments. You have all these things that could be affected if you lost your job or you transition to another job or field. What we want to do is we want to build the Life Happens Fund. Now, we've been talking a lot, and what I want you to look at is this. It's time to take action. You need to take action today. You need to take a look at the Scan Me button or QR code here that goes straight to my website. Book an appointment with me. Let's see how we can sit down and answer this problem for you. The other scan code is for life insurance, because the worst thing that could happen is that you no longer have or qualify for life insurance because you're no longer with your job and something happens. What that would do is that would actually hurt your family, because there's no additional revenue coming in and there's no insurance. So click both links, see what you qualify for, and just remember, you need to take advantage before the bell ends. This is Mike Barnes, the Financial First Responder. Please like and subscribe my channel. I look forward to talking to you, and have a great day. God bless.